shakalak boom, boom 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 boom, shakalak boom 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 boom, shakalak boom 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 boom, shakalak boom boom.
I'm Jeremy. I went to Union from 2015 grad. I was a diver all 4 years, and I went to school for computer engineering. When I'm looking for divers, generally, like, I'm just looking for right now for bodies, just because, like, there's not a lot of people that are ready to dive, but or willing to dive. But if I had my druthers that I could recruit, I'm looking for, you know, generally strong and flexible athletes, I guess. So
diving's a very linear sport. It's also very, like, you see Olympic divers and you're like, oh my god, they're so strong and they're really, like, muscling everything. It's actually not true. It's very, like, every motion is very elongated and patient. Like, it's probably one of the more patient sports you have to, like, technique-wise.
For all dives, really, you have your takeoff, your whatever you're performing in the air, and then your entry. So. I mean, I would say the key to any dive is your takeoff, because, like, if you have a really good takeoff, then the chances of you being able to perform the dive well are quite high. If you have a bad takeoff and you don't jump very high, then you're going to have more difficulties.
The reason you want height in your dive is because that goes into the judging factors of it. So judges like to see the dive pretty much be finished above the board, so you have time to drop it in. It obviously changes from board to board. So 1 meter, they like to see the dive finished above the board. 3 meter, you know, as long as you're not finishing it at the water, as long as you have time to, like, come out all the way and drop it in, that's really what they're looking for. So height is obviously, you know, the main factor in that. You know, personally, I like getting much higher because obviously you have more time to finish your dive. It looks nicer. You don't have to rush things as much.
Let's take a look at that. The height of your dive is important and depends on your takeoff from the board. A diving board is a classic example of a third-class lever. Levers move around a fulcrum, which multiplies the mechanical force they can apply. This is known as mechanical advantage. When you stand on the end of a diving board, your weight acts as the load pushing the board down. The stiffness of the board provides the resistive force upwards. The force production phase of a dive involves directly jumping up and down repeatedly in order to have a greater downward force directly before jumping off the board. The force exerted by the board on the diver is important for generating height on the dive. This force is dependent on the deflection of the board. In this way, the board can be treated as a spring. The stiffness and modulus of elasticity of the board's material will affect how the board, about its fulcrum, amplifies the mechanical force applied to it by the diver.
It's all about timing with the board when you're on the board. So, like, it's all about riding the board. Like, there's the fulcrum of the board, and that obviously makes it more or less bouncy. But when you make the board more bouncy, you have to account for that by waiting for it. So, usually it takes a lot longer to get off the board, but with that comes more power. So you get higher. So diving boards, it's kind of a monopoly, actually. The board company is called Durafram or Duraflex, I don't remember, but it's really the only board company out there, and they, like, usually they obviously, they come out with new models, and I guess, you know, that's attributed to the, you know, change in technology. They're mostly made out of fiberglass. I think it's like fiberglass mixed with something. I'm not really sure what. I think it's some composite material. But yeah, there's not really very many variations of boards. In diving, there's 5 main categories. There's fronts, backs, inwards, reverses, and twisters. Fronts and inwards are pretty much the same mechanics. minus the forward approach, and in reverses and backs are pretty much the same mechanics. And then you get into the twister realm, which is a variation of a front, back, inward, or reverse.
There's different positions in diving, and like if you go to a competition, they'll say like, so that was a 101A. So A is straight, there's B, which is pike, C is tuck. So straight is just everything's completely out, like your legs are straight, everything torso up.
So straight obviously is straight. Usually it's a little bit of an arch. Like for example, back dive straight, you come up, you set, and so you're kind of arched.
So you want to take off completely vertical, and then what you actually are going to do is you're going to lean slightly forward, and then you pop your toes, which is what makes you rotate, and then just stay straight. It's pretty simple, but...
Divers want to enter the water completely vertically so that less of a splash is created, since this affects their score. When the diver makes contact with the water, a cavity is created due to the fact that the velocity of the air and water with which the diver makes contact is much greater than the surrounding water. This is why the form and follow-through of the dive is important. When performing our calculations, we must look at the center of gravity of the diver because the diver's path of motion can be predicted from this.
This dive is sweet. Finland's.
E la base di Luganis è già molto in
So what we're
avanti.
looking for is he's got a perfect, look at that, like that's like as perfect as it gets. He got all 10s, I think, all 10s and a 9.5, but as they go through it again slow-mo. But as he comes off the board, he's completely straight, he's vertical, and he goes straight up, he pops the toes, and then drops it on his hips. So,
Prima di lui, che aveva meritato dei 9.
Ecco, rigustiamocelo questo volo d'angelo.
Molto alto.
We are examining a straight dive. However, if we were to look at a tuck dive, the moment of inertia would decrease and the angular velocity would increase throughout the dive. But right before the diver enters the water, he would try to straighten himself out to increase his moment of inertia and, therefore, decrease his angular speed so that the least amount of splash is created upon his initial contact with the water.
The whole premise behind a pike and tuck and straight, so like tuck, you don't want to be loose, you want to have your shoulders to your knees or knees to your shoulders, you want to grab at your shins, you want to have it kind of spread like a V so you can see where you're going. Pike, kind of similar, you want to be looking past your toes and you want to grab behind your legs so you can really get a tight pike. Judges really like to see like your legs and your face, like they don't really want to see any space in between there. So obviously a lot of flexibility goes into diving.
the more you decrease your radius, I guess, or the tighter you are and your tougher your position, the faster you're going to rotate. So for their pike positions, if they're not very flexible, they can't get as tight, so they're going to spin slower.
You really have to have a good start. You have to get really long here and then really try to get a 90-90-90 throw. So what I mean by that is 90 between your toes and the board, 90 between your arms and your torso, and 90 between your torso and your legs. Mm-hmm. That really creates like the optimal motion.
Yeah.
So usually in an inward dive, you oscillate the board a little bit, and then I personally count to 4, and then I go like this. And I really try to elongate as much as I can. I try to like be hollow in my chest as well. This really helps me load the board up. It kind of like brings the board up to a max height, so then I can really press down and drop my chest over my toes. It's also really important there is to circle my arms through fast and get them back up to my ears while the board's down, so I can press and be throwing down as I press, and that really helps push my hips up and out and really start the dive. Having a good board and the combination of a good board and being able to ride the board correctly, so like everything with the arms and the chest we were talking about, like that's having that all together is really like what what optimizes the height you get.
You're ready.